Oh, like the thumbs up. I love using the reactions. I feel like I have slowly learned how to use them, and they're like my favorite thing. All right, as everyone is joining, our data aficionado for the programs team at the ION, Lauren Brooks, will be kind of giving us a broad overview of data visualization, how we think about data, how we use data. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and or ask questions along the way, comments, come off mute, ask your question. These are very casual. You know, there's just a few of us in here, so however interactive you want to be, we would love it. So with no more, I can't think of my analogies today, but I will just let Lauren take it over, and I will be here whenever you need me.
Awesome, thank you. So let me just switch over my screens. I have so many, so just bear with me. Present. Awesome. All right, can everybody see my screen? Data Visualization 101. So, data is everything. Data is very special to me. So oh, where'd my little screen go? So to begin, let me move this over here. Topics for today. This is going to be very, very casual, very, very informal, this is stuff that you should probably know, but I'm always here to just give a little more insight to what exactly it is. So a few key takeaways is understanding the value of collecting and cleaning data. I think people forget a part of cleaning data. And what is data actually? Breaking it down even further than that. Why do we collect data in everyday life? Recognizing the importance of organizing your data to tell a story. That's really what the goal of data visualization is taking all of your data, all of that raw stuff in spreadsheets that is sometimes intimidating, and putting it in something really pretty. I'm a very creative person, but I'll tell a bit more of myself in a second. We're also going to learn about how to present your data in ways that people will understand. So there has been times you may have seen data visualizations that really don't tell you anything or are confusing. And in that's a bad data visualization. So a little about me. I'm Lauren. I'm the program administrator with the ION. So on a day-to-day basis, I help keep track of the report of the events and reporting for attendees that we have visiting our events online. I also help create processes and procedures that align with our mission, vision, and goals. And on a daily, I work with collected data from multiple data sources. I'm a Mount Holyoke graduate. I don't know if you've heard of Mount Holyoke. It's actually up in It's up in South Hadley, Massachusetts. It's an all-female institution. I'll share more about it if you want to know, but that's not the purpose of this presentation. And I found a deep love for understanding people and their motives. I think that was really important for me when I got into psychology. But I found myself excelling in a different area of psychology that I didn't really think I was really good at. And that was research and statistics. And I was really surprised by that. I'm also a world traveler. I've lived abroad for a little bit, and I've been all over Europe. I've been to Thailand, that was fun. And I'm also pursuing a graduate degree in data science and analytics in the near future. For me, when I think about data, data is power, data is knowledge, and through knowledge and power, you can act, you can create action. So, what is data? Anyone have it? Anyone want to tell me what data is? It's a very broad question, but I think it's a question that sometimes we don't think about. Oh, the chat is going off. Let me see. Numbers, graphs, table, anything. Exactly. Data is anything, everything. Observation, facts, pieces of information without context or logic. So it's a pen, it's a cup. But then again, that needs some type of context, logic, language. So why do we collect data? As humans, this is my psychology part of me, we like to categorize things. We need to categorize things. The world is so confusing. We have all of this sensory input, but how do we make sense of it? So our brain automatically starts categorizing things for us. This is like the same way with data. We categorize the information that we want to collect that focuses on a particular variable or research question that we've had in mind. So I love this image. Data, information, knowledge, insight, wisdom. I had to think about an example that really made sense for this. And for me, data, a bee. It's an insect, it's there, it's a bee. But when I give it more information, bees make noise, they can sting, but then it also correlates to another piece of data in my head that becomes information, pain. I don't want to get stung by the bee. So now I have this knowledge when, I'm saying when, because I've never been stung by a bee, but I know when I get stung by a bee, it's going to hurt, I'm going to cry. I have these connections now between different points of information that seem very random, not connected, but through action, through different experiences, those data points, those information points become connected. Insight, you know what's going to happen between those two data points. You know that bee, pain, what happens in between there. If I do something to that bee, I will get stung. Wisdom is just knowing that path all along and avoiding it if that's what you want. So in a real life situation, data is used every single day. Our founding fathers actually knew that they wanted to have data as an important factor to how they understand, how they make decisions for our country, right? Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, I promise you this is not a political talk at all. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within the union according to their respective numbers. Right there, numbers. The goal of our census every 10 years is to count people. It's one big survey. It's one big survey that collects this information to help divvy up 675 billion federal funds and also determine how many representatives are going into the House of Representatives. It is a very interesting concept when you think about data collection is basically the foundation of our country, of everything that we have to do. Again, as humans, we want to categorize things. We want to understand things. We want to make sense of things and have things in order. So again, another example, elections. It's a big survey. They're counting who gets the points, who gets the win. And there's more information and more stuff going on behind the back end, but feedback surveys, obviously. It's collecting information, it's collecting data. And on a more, I guess, metaphysical level in my head, job applications and college service, anything, a job application, an application to live in an apartment, a house, an application to take a loan, it's all collecting information from you. So now we know that data is in everyday life, and this has been happening since 1790. They knew this was going to keep happening, so let's just keep on picking up the data. But as Christine mentioned earlier during her presentation, junk in equals junk out. Before you're able to put your data into any graphs, any type of chart, representation, visualization, anything, you should look at your data to make sure it's accurate. Here is just a sample data set that I found online about superheroes. And then I manipulated a little bit to have a lot of errors in it. So the ones that are highlighted yellow are actually pretty consistent. Every single variable that you see, gender, eye color, race, hair color, height, and weight, has something there for them. Items in red, something's going on, something's wrong, something's missing. So as you can see, A-bomb is a duplicate. Eye color, male, fine, everything's good. When you look at Abe Sapien, male, male. Interesting, something's wrong. So a quick way that I like to use to check all of the data that I work with for the ION, and I encourage everyone when they're working with their data, are filters. It is a nice, simple way to understand what's happening in the whole entire data set. So adding a filter to your first row and then looking down, you should know, okay, for name, you should see only names. For gender, they only have 2 genders listed, so you should see male and female. If you see male, female, blue, yellow, human, you know that there's data in the wrong area. Eye color, so on and so forth. It becomes a practice, it becomes secondhand nature when you start looking at data and saying, is it clean? Because again, if you're working with bad data, you're going to get misleading results, misleading answers. So what we do want is clean data in, clean data out. I heard this in college and it made perfect sense. If you're working with incomplete, erroneous, duplicated data sets, your visualizations are going to be misleading. If you spend time on the front end, making sure that your raw data is correct and accurate, does not have any errors. Missing data is something that sometimes always happens. I encounter it every single day. You can't always collect everything, but you really want to have the majority of the data. And noting, okay, that there are 17 data sets with missing information. Being honest with your data is very, very important. So before I move on, are there any questions? I think I saw one in the chat. So, are you measuring what you think you're measuring? How do you know? It's true. So the biggest question for me when it goes back to data collection is going back and thinking about what is the goal of collecting your information? Why are you doing it in the first place? Is it to understand who you're working with, to get a better picture of the people you serve, your target audience you want to serve with? It's really important to understand why you're doing it in the first place. And then, yeah, having those clear variables that you want to track. Is it age? Is it gender? Is it race? Is it location? It could be anything, but being sure that it relates back to your main research question, because if you're collecting data that's not needed, then you're going to have a lot of different variables you have to work with in the visualizations that maybe it's not needed. So moving on, visualizing data. So you eat with your eyes first. On top of being a person that likes numbers, I do enjoy a lot of creative works. I like to cook. I like to go outside and hike when it's not too hot or not too cold or not too rainy, depending if the weather is just perfect. So I don't go hiking often in Houston, which is fine. I like to do ceramics. There's different things. I'm a very creative person outside of being a very methodical, number-driven person. In a nutshell, we all know what data visualization is. Data visualization is basically putting raw data into forms that are easy to understand. Graphs, charts, pie charts, line charts, heat maps, bubbles showing concentration of a certain number of people in an area or count. But some of my favorites that I've learned over time are interactive charts, different tools that bring your data to life, because with bar charts and line charts, pie charts, it's static. It'll show you the distribution, the relationship, the composition, all of that good stuff. But what if you have a specific question about your data? A specific question about a specific type of person for your data? So recently, I've been really using a lot of Power BI, which has been really, really fun when it comes to looking at data, interactive charts, interactive tables, maps that boil down to where people are self-reporting they're coming from, dynamic counts that shift with how you filter your charts. And I think one of my favorites that I have been using have been tree maps. Tree maps are basically the boxes that show the proportions over here to the very, very right. They're pretty cool because it visually shows you the amount, like everything else, but it's just a little bit different on the eyes. And again, you're eating with your eyes first. So Data visualization do's. The good thing about data visualization, there's a lot of opportunity to be creative. There's different types of graphs, different types of charts. Use a variety. Don't get stuck to one. Don't get married to one because one's more comfortable. Some graphs might not be the right fit to understand the data you're trying to show. Some graphs may be more appropriate to use in that type of situation. Have a clear understanding and purpose for collecting your data again. If you're reporting your data, why do you want to show this one particular graph over another? Also, know what data you're collecting and how you're collecting it. Be sure you become fluent with your data. And if someone asks a question about, well, why is this here? You can speak on it fluently, because honestly, that's the only way to know in reality what's going on. Pro tips that I've learned: label your axes. So the axes are the Y going down and the X going across. So label your axes, add label counts, little things that make it easier for the viewer to understand what you're trying to display. Because again, it looks nice, but if you have no numbers or counts or what that bar even means, it's just a bar chart. You need to be specific, you need to give detail to make sure that you're conveying what you want to convey to the viewer. And I cannot stress this enough, make sure your data visualizations are easy to understand. Don't combine graphs. I'll show you pretty soon some bad data visualization examples. When you start combining, having a different count on the right axis versus the left Y axis, you're conflating all this information that sometimes is easier to digest when you have separate graphs. All right, so going back to data in everyday life, this is an example, like a perfect example of why I love data visualization. Everyone must have heard how California lost a House representative for the first time in history, and Texas gained 2. That's exactly what this raw data is telling us, but to the average person, do you want to look at that? Honestly, it's a lot to look at. It's a lot of numbers. It's pretty easy to understand once you understand, okay, state, appropriation, appointment, whatever, population. It's a lot to take in. Our brain understands automatically what the US map looks like. We have a key that correlates directly to the change from the 2010 census, 2020 census. And from there, we could really get a quick insight, a quick snapshot of what's going on without having to dig through the data. That is also the point, is not digging through the data to find what you need to find. Visualization should make your life easier. They really should. And if they don't, you should question, what's the purpose, or let's figure out how to make it easier. For example, like this. The don'ts, these are my favorites because I see them sometimes and I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Can anyone tell me what's happening? We don't have a lot of information or context where this is coming from, but what's happening? A lot, that's what I'll say is happening. A lot is happening. We have a few variables and we have a clear timeline. We have a clear count on the y-axis, but it's hard, it's chaotic. It's chaotic. And that isn't the point of a visualization, is to cause your brain to be like, whoa, let me follow this red line down, but there's a blue line. It's too much. So finding a different way to represent that would be really, really beneficial. All right, ready for another one, which is horrible, but I find to be hilarious. It doesn't help you draw any conclusions. So what conclusions can you make from this? Even if you had more context, there really isn't much. You can say that something happened with events, but then again, in a February 2015, but this just is so much going on that what's your main goal in talking about all of this? So, my favorite whenever I see this. By accident, when you're playing in Excel or whatever, you could put different variables in different charts and you'll get stuff like this. But what does it tell you? I look at it and all I can do is laugh because I have no idea what the percentages even correlate to. Like, I have no idea what any of this even means. So again, bad data visualization does not do you any service. It's actually going to complicate and honestly annoy the viewer because it's too much. So while again, not as bad, the one on the right, it's showing you so many different things. We have a graph that tracks the count of authors, publications, citations, but then another graph on top of that that shows the percentage of publication growth rate, citation growth rate, and author growth rate. It's so much going on that, again, if we narrow down what variables we want to talk about, we could combine a bar and a line graph, but not to the extent of which is happening here. We need to think about what story, what points, what key takeaways can you tell someone, or what key takeaways do you hope someone can take from that has no idea or knowledge of the data that you're even working with. So before I move on, are there any questions? Comments?
I had one, kind of thinking just like generally, if the person that made the graph has to be there to explain the graph, that should be a big no-no, right?
Yes, the graph should be pretty self-explanatory. It should be to the point where that's why it's also important that everything should be labeled. It should have a heading. It should be clearly defined what's being measured on every single axis. And the person who can look at it can say, okay, the heading is count of X per X. And then they can go down and they can go through every single variable and see the different trends, see the heights of the different bars and say, okay, this one is higher than this. This means this. It should be a way to simplify your data that is sometimes too much to understand. So again, the census, a lot of information, but they have to make sure they can put it into a way that if they want to make a point, how can they boil it down to something that's easily digestible? That's really what it is. Can it be, because not everyone wants to look at the data. You have to remember that too. Not everyone wants to look at the data or has the familiarity to look at the data. It could be more, it's just easier to have a visualization for someone to understand what's going on. So pretty self-intuitive, but there are times when data can deceive you or you can deceive the data. And that is not good. That is not good. You have to be honest. Your job when working with data is honesty. You honestly have to report what the data tells you, even if it supports or disproves your research or your hypothesis. It just shows you that maybe you're wrong. And through what we've talked about many times, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail because through there is an opportunity to grow and learn something new and pivot. So another quote that I love, correlation does not always mean causation. I like putting the always in there because sometimes it does, but you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You have to look at data with eyes and context, making sure that there's nothing going on, any confounding variables that you're not even measuring that's actually causing an effect over here that you didn't even think about. So I remember back during the elections, one last one, there was a survey going out about how satisfied you were with someone's service. And I opened the survey and the options were satisfied, very satisfied, extremely satisfied. And it made me very confused because I'm like, what kind of survey is this when you're basically fishing for the answers that you want to receive? So there's different ways that people try to manipulate the data, cherry picking, selecting results that fit your claim and excluding stuff that does not, survivorship data, drawing conclusions from data that has survived a certain means of criteria and is still there to be worked with. It could be incomplete, it probably is inaccurate, whatever the case may be. Sampling bias is one of my favorite as well. If you're going to collect data, make sure you're being representative of the whole and not a piece that is for what you want or against what you want. So the example that I put on the screen is a woman. She has a little sign that says, do you prefer cats or dogs? But you can clearly see that the woman has a dog sweater on, is walking a dog, and has like show dogs in the back. So you're asking someone that probably likes dogs. So being aware of who you're asking so that you get true and accurate results and not saying, oh, I did a survey, I only got negative responses, but maybe you didn't ask a representative or a sample that was representative of the entirety, or not just what was convenient. So one that I think is actually really funny that I would like to share, and I'll share this presentation afterwards because there are some links that you can go on and to explore some more. Again, an example of why correlation does not always mean causation. The link, it goes to many more and they're hilarious, but divorce rates in Maine correlates to, that basically means the trend in divorce rates over time correlates to the per capita consumption of margarine. That's a pretty bold statement to make. But I don't think they were studying those two as variables that would impact each other. You can see here is the person actually pulled it from two different data sources, and they do correlate. Just because something shows an impact on the other does not mean that that's what's actually going on. I love the false correlations too. Yes, they're so good. There was one, I think, I forgot how it goes, but back, I think it was in 1950 or something like that, between the correlation of polio and ice cream sales. So there was a whole big hullabaloo, but it's one of those things you need to look at your data and look at graphs with a discerning eye and think, okay, what else could be going on here? Because something else could be going on. And with that being said, this is my last slide. A ton of resources, a ton of data visualization tools that I like to use. However, when it comes to data visualization, it goes back to having clean data. You can use any single tool out there. There is a learning curve, of course, but if you have clean data and once you understand the basics of how the tool will work and manipulate your data, endless opportunities. I've been able to use Power BI without a hitch. I was recently introduced while making this presentation to Google Studio or Google Data Studio. Very cool, very similar to Power BI, just not as Power BI-esque. Another one that I saw actually on the Vision Zero website, ArcGIS, that works on data location and matching like geolocations with data information, which is really cool. Chartio is another one that you can build different visualizations based on connecting it to a Google Sheet, Excel. Tableau, a little more sophisticated, but I have used before in my prior life at the food bank working there. So yeah, go at your own risk. Be open to the possibilities of data because they're endless, and be truthful with what the data is telling you. And also check out all of the fallacies that are out there regarding data, because sometimes things happen. You can actually begin to see and question when you see data presented to you, like, is that the full data set? Did you just take a little piece of the data set that fits what you think is most accurate? You become more inquisitive about the world around you when you understand the purpose and process of handling data. So with that being said, that is all I have for you today. If you have any questions, please go ahead. I want to hear them. And again, this presentation will be shared with you along with the recording.
Do we have any brave souls in the audience or just a comment about data or anything else that Lauren can talk about while we're here?
Anything. Because data is so important. You can make informed decisions with data. Recommend storing data. Goes back to being organized. So again, finding a system, a cloud-based system is usually good because then again, everyone can go and access it on your team. Keeping it organized based upon, is it an event, what date, having a naming system so that you could easily refer people to what you're talking about. Organization is key. Trying to cut down on the clutter and the confusion that can sometimes be brought up with storing data. I'm very organized when it comes to it because it's the easiest way to find what you're looking for later. If you think about it, let's say you're trying to pull 10 reports a month, that's a lot of reports you have to deal with down the line when it's September and you already have 80 reports in the backlog. So finding a way to keep everything organized under your own filing system, under your naming system, doing research to see, okay, what is the best way to do it? And trusting yourself, and also not being scared to going online and asking for help and Googling things, because again, this is learning for everyone. There's so much to learn, and I'm really excited about the fact that I am where I am. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, if not, we will, Lauren and I can stay on for a few minutes, but you guys have, 10 minutes back to do, oh wait, here we are. What are your thoughts on data and ethics, in particular, the collection and usage of big data?
Oh, yes. Ethics. You are doing a service. When you're collecting data, you are collecting something very personal from someone. In any situation, when you're asking someone to reveal something or share something with you, you need to keep them in mind. You need to make sure that you're doing the best to keep their data safe, that their identity is protected, that their information isn't just anywhere. So making sure that you do keep track of where you're storing your data, making sure that it is protected between just your team, making sure that if you are going to use big data, is it verified? Has it been validated? Is it reliable? Where's the source coming from? Can it be used? Just making sure that you're not going in, taking someone else's data. And yeah, IRBs. So I know that's a question. Okay. Yes. Yes. The IRB process with colleges. Christine?
What's the question? Sorry, I just see IRB. Jamie?
In any case, you should have an IRB.
Yeah, so who does that apply to and who has to actually go through that process? It's for data collected online from everything from Amazon to Facebook versus if I'm doing a research project and I'm putting out some kind of a survey and I've only had to do this for a couple of projects, but it just seems odd that, I don't know, that big tech can collect data without going through processes like this. And I know that when you sign up for services, and nobody reads all of that text, of course, of what they're agreeing to use Windows or to use. So it's just, yeah, there is a lot of ethics for data use. And I'm a fan of the open source programming where we should be able to see the code and manipulate the code for any program that we use, just like we're able to see the ingredients of the food that we eat.
Yeah.
That we should see what data is being collected, and there should, just like there's laws around transparency with food, there should be laws around transparency of product use and data collection. But that's, it's an interesting thing. It's
It's true. I will say one of my, I was tasked with that actually when I first was starting working at the food bank. It was very interesting. People don't think about how much data the food bank collects. Along with food, they actually have to collect information about their clients so that they're actually understanding who they're serving and they can report on who they're serving accurately. So making sure that everyone was aware of the uses of data, how we collect and store data, how we share data. It's pretty intense. It's pretty intense for sure. I've learned that de-identifying your data is your best bet. Make sure that your data can't be traced back to any person, because then no one could say, hey, you used this, or hey, my name is out here. So by practice, that's kind of one thing that they were working on, I was working on. It's pretty interesting. You cross a lot of ethical, or introduce a lot of ethical questions about collecting information and data of all sorts. Because what is personal?
Yeah, it's hard, because if you can't trace it back to the person, then how do you verify that it's real data? I worked with the Montgomery County Food Bank, and we do food fairs in the parking lot, and it was just clipboards and piece of paper, and some people, of course, didn't want their name taken, and it's a rough thing for elections and everything else.
A lot of data management across the board in terms of how we manage all of this data, who's doing it, how do we process it, how do we share it back with people? Will they understand? Will they believe the data? The data speaks for itself, honestly. Were there limits on how long the data could be retained? For certain programs, there definitely was. So for programs that had senior boxes, they had time limits on how long they had to keep the information. Before that, we were implementing a data tracking system for the first time. So they created it. We created our timelines. But usually it was in mandate with whatever was required about keeping our data. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited that they're actually at a point that they were actually using this system. It was intense, because if you didn't know, the Houston Food Bank is the largest food bank in the nation in terms of output. So it's a lot to manage to say, oh, we serve this many people, but at the same time, it's all estimates. So this was their opportunity to fully understand who we're serving. And again, people don't always want their information stored or even shared or even collected. So it was a learning curve across the board for everyone, even the people that were there to receive the services. Why do you need this? Why do I have to give this to you? If I don't, can I still receive what I came here for? And it's intimidating. But if anything, one thing I like to take away is data is there to help you. Data is there to give you insight. Data is there to give you information that you may have not known, that you'll never know, but now you actually have a way to understand it. And the visualizations are just there to make it easier on the brain, because sometimes looking at a million spreadsheets from experience does not give you information. It gives you a lot of just data and a lot of, yes, information, but no context what that actually means. And that's really what's important and really what's the magical about it. You can see the objective within the subjective questions that you're trying to answer.
Great. So I know David and Mert, I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly. This session is almost over. Our next one will begin at 3, but just letting you know so you weren't confused when we end in just a few minutes. But we will be sending this out, and Lauren has agreed to share her presentation, so you can take a look at her data presentation. After we send everything out in probably later this evening or next week. So thank you all, and we'll kind of stay on for just a few minutes, but we'll see you back at 3 o'clock. I am going to be talking about mentors and how best to find a mentor in this ecosystem. So thank you all.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Whoops. Oh no, I took him out, but I don't know if it will that make.
Did you just put them in the waiting room?
Yeah. Don't report. Okay, he should be okay to come back in maybe later.
Okay.
Whoops.
All
Great, good job.
Thank you.
Here, let me.
It's all very data, just data.